But this week, Mr. President, this week, we must also acknowledge that the attack on January 6th was not a one-off. It did not materialize out of the blue. On the contrary, January 6th was a symptom of a much broader illness that has now infected the modern Republican Party, an effort to delegitimize our elections rooted in Donald Trump's big lie. And while January 6th was only one day, the big lie lives on and has only grown stronger. The big lie lives on in Republican-dominated state legislatures, where at least 19 states have passed 33 new laws that will potentially make it harder for millions to vote in our elections. They say they want to prevent fraud, and they have no evidence of fraud. We all know what they're up to. Vitiating, poisoning our elections, the sacred part of the American democracy. And the violence and threats of violence continue. The big lie lives on through the troubling wave of violent threats that election workers across the country have endured over the course of the last year, all simply for the audacity of having done their job to count the votes fairly and without bias. And if left alone, the big lie threatens the very future of our republic. If people don't believe in the sanctity of our elections, what is going to happen to this republic? The sanctity of elections, the fairness of elections, the fact that after Election Day we abide by the results, has been the cornerstone of our entire democracy. It's what democracy is all about. It's what the Founding Fathers constructed. Are we going to let that go by the wayside? Are we going to let it be poisoned and vitiated with huge consequences to the effect of this nation, probably greater than any we have seen since the Civil War? So as we remember January 6th this week, and as we confront state-level voter suppression, we must be clear. They are not isolated developments. They are all directly linked to the same anti-democratic poison of the big lie. Let me say that one more time. Insurrection of January 6th, the flurry of new voter restriction laws, and state-level efforts to subvert democracy are not isolated developments, but manifestations of the same anti-democratic poison of Donald Trump's big lie. And they all demand the same solution. The Senate must advance legislation to protect our democracy and safeguard the right to vote. Over the coming weeks, the Senate will thus consider legislation we can pass to achieve this goal. Democrats for months have tried to bring Republicans to the table, but every single time, Republicans used the rules of the Senate to prevent even a debate. Voting rights in the past was a bipartisan issue. How quickly they forget. Republican presidents, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, supported voting rights. When voting rights extensions came up in this body in the past, they passed by large majorities, bipartisan. The resistance we see from modern-day Republicans is a beast of an entirely different nature. Maybe some of them are scared of Trump, but too many of them see this as a way to win advantage, to get their hard-right views enacted, even though the public doesn't support them, by jaundicing our election process and saying and putting barriers in the way of particular people, not all people, of voting. People of color, poor people, people who live in big cities, young people, handicapped people, elderly people.